The Secret Teachings of Padmasambhava, Essential Instructions on Mastering the Energies of Life, translated by Kennard Lipman, Ph.D., and read by Angus Cargill. The meaning of the fivefold essential instruction. The fivefold essential instruction shows how the five elemental phases of earth, wind, fire, water, and space operate at deeper and deeper levels of reality. At the outer level, which is the first of the five levels of understanding, the natural environment that we experience consists of five phases of earth, water, fire, wind, and space. These emanate from the primordial ground of being as a spontaneous glimmering in five hues, but are collectively experienced as five physical phases through a process of concretization. Concretization refers to the process of moving from a spiritual to a physical reality. The inner level shows how living beings of the six realms of samsara originate from the active aspect of the phases. Their mutual functioning produces life-sustaining processes, such as the change of seasons and the growth of plants. On the hidden level, the functioning of the five phases is used to explain the ordinary experience of living beings in samsara, including their growth and aging. The more hidden level takes us into the tantric understanding of the body and how to put this understanding into practice. Each phase has two aspects. One is our ordinary experience of the body and its interactions with mind and behavior. Another is a spontaneous presence, like a radiant hue, that transcends the dichotomy between material and spiritual. This presence and its subtle gradations is referred to with terms such as the creative potency, pristine awareness, and active energy of the phases. The more hidden level discusses how this creative potency can be accessed to both maintain vitality and experience enlightenment through the body. There are two ways to do this. One, by increasing the creative potency naturally, and two, by increasing the creative potency using a suitable partner. The first is done by oneself. The phases and their creative potency cycle through the chakras in the course of a lunar month, and visualizing these energy centers at the appropriate times can increase their power. While the moon is waxing, these subtle energies rise from the chakra at the sex organs to the crown chakra. With the waning moon, they expand downward again. For example, at the navel chakra, one visualizes, by the fourth day of the month, dakas and dakinis of the Lotus family, radiating the light energy of the five phases through all energetic pathways of the body. In this way, the functioning of the phases is harmonized, health is maintained, and the various aspects of pure awareness are experienced. The tantric ritual calendar of new moon, full moon, dakini practices, and so on, is based on this subtle movement. The second method, utilizing a sexual partner, increases the efficacy of these visualizations. While some techniques associated with tantric sexual practice are discussed, so is the importance of going beyond technique, as we mentioned above. Here, Padmasambhava also injects a rare personal statement, indicating that there is room for further investigation in the experiential realm of tantric practice. If there are some errors in the wording here, intelligent people ought to investigate them. By this instruction, may the path of passion be learned, and the active energy of one's phases increased and protected. The fifth level and final section of our text is a kind of addendum, for it shows how to heal various kinds of illnesses caused by the imbalance of the phases and their interactions with thought and behavior. This was especially important practical advice for someone on retreat for an extended period of time in a remote location. The colophon states, I, Padmarav Urgen, have composed this in the cave on top of Rust Mountain. Without spreading it everywhere, I make it an experience for myself. Two, translation of the fivefold essential instruction. Homage to the Dakinis of the five families. I, Padmarav Urgen, shall give this essential oral instruction on the Dakini. 1. The outer level. First, the five external phases are earth, the process that creates solidity, water, the process that creates cohesion, fire, the process that creates temperature, wind, the process that creates movement, and space, the process that creates an open dimension. What is the cause of these five phases? First, space, which has been an open dimension since the beginningless beginning, and pristine awareness are indivisible. Pristine awareness denotes that aspect within the discerning capacity of the mind that has been there since the very beginning. In space, the intrinsic illuminating quality of pristine awareness is present as a spontaneous glimmering in five hues. Since no good or evil can be found in these, it is called primordially pure. Since it is primordial, it is called naturally complete. In this above-mentioned pristine awareness, samsara and nirvana cannot be found. If neither of these exists from the very beginning, it is meaningless to claim that pristine awareness comes about now as a result attained. Fire does not appear as something new when one puts a torch very briefly in water, and it continues to burn after taking it out again. Therefore, since going astray exists as pristine awareness from the very beginning, in the end, when going astray has been swept away, this is the essence of Buddhahood. The reason the five external phases come about is as follows. First, in the open dimension that is without a beginning, five hues arise through the presence of the creative energy of pristine awareness. Because an uninterrupted pure presence exists within this, the concretization of these five hues can come about. This activity of concretization is called wind. In reality, it is the creative energy of pure presence. Within this creative energy, the illuminating quality of pristine discriminating awareness is red, and by going astray into reification, the red of the fire phase arises. The metabolic capacity of the creative energy of pure presence can arise as the movement of this phase. The pristine awareness of fundamental sameness radiates as a yellow hue, and when this is reified, the earth phase arises. Then pristine mirror-like awareness arises as a white hue, and because this is reified, the water phase comes about. The pristine awareness related to activity radiates as a green hue, and because this is reified, the phase of wind arises. The phase of space remains the same as pristine awareness from the very beginning, and fundamentally does not undergo transformation. Since these hues, which are the intrinsic illumining quality of pristine awareness, are concretized into a this, the phases of earth, water, fire, and wind arise. Wind refers to the fact that these are pervaded with the creative energy of pure presence. Because the four phases are pervaded with wind, wind produces the wind's power of lifting, fire's powers of heat and burning, water's powers of wetness and coolness, and earth's powers of hardness and the ability to provide support. When the five forms of pristine awareness are reified, the five phases are established as substances, and because they are fundamentally moved by the creative energy of pure presence, the creative energy of the phases comes about. By the combination of these phases, the environment of the perishable world system arises. It originates as follows. When the open dimension, which has been there from the very beginning, is reified, the mandala of wind originates. On this, water originates, and on this, earth. Fire is the creative energy of wind, and it pervades the other three. This is the way the external phases come about. The inner level. Now, the way sentient beings, who are the inner life of the world, originate is as follows. In the center of the double Vajra-shaped wind mandala, a slight warmth arises through the creative energy of pristine awareness. Because this heats up the water phase, vapor rises like smoke through a hole, and that vapor heats up the earth phase. Therefore, heat pervades all these phases. From the active aspect of the four phases, and from being mixed with the hues intrinsic to pristine awareness, three condensation spots of light appear. The gods, although they have no essence, arise from the first light. The four divisions of the realm of formlessness arise out of rays of this light. From this, the 17 states of the realm of form originate out of the creative energy of pure presence when its own movement is reified. Then, further reifying this movement leads to the arising of the 20 states of the realm of the sensuous. Thus, although pristine awareness has always been present, innumerable sentient beings of the 6 life forms arise due to a lack of pure presence. This state of samsara, into which one has gone astray through lack of pure presence, itself neither increases nor decreases. Since sentient beings, who are the inner life of the universe, come about from the active aspect of the energy of the phases, they are called sentient beings who are the inner life of the universe. From the second light, the sun and moon come about. First of all, they exist in space, because they come about from the active energy of the 5 phases and the luminosity of space. They are able to shine on everything, because they are the creative energy of pristine awareness. They possess heat because they originate from the active energy of fire. Further, the sun is hot because it is the primary instance of the active energy of fire. The moon is cool because it is the primary instance of the active energy of water. The creative energy of these two makes them shine like the light from many stars. The phases are produced one by one and mutually assist one another in their functioning. Further, when the phases are producing each other one by one, as when they mutually assist one another in the spring, their activity is increasing. Therefore, daytime is longer, and it is warmer. When the active aspects of the phases are equal, day and night are equal. When the phases are not equal, night is shorter, because the power of one has increased slightly. When the phases then gradually act to restrain each other, their activity declines, and days get shorter and cooler. The sun goes down because at a certain time the phases are dispersed, and then, having been reorganized by wind, they operate just as before. The changes of the moon and the stars are the same. Further, because warmth arises from the center of the double Vajra of the wind phase, it heats up the water phase. The vapor that arises from the water heats and pervades the earth phase. Heat arises by its own power through the active energy of the fire phase. For example, strongly rubbing two sticks together produces heat, which is like fire arising. The heat-pervaded vapor of the earth forms fog by rising into the sky. Rain comes from the condensation of the fog, like the formation of curds or the dew formed on the cover of a pot. In this way, the 5 phases are generated one by one. Because they mutually assist one another, the increasing activity of the phases makes the sprouts, leaves, flowers, and fruits of all the trees, grasses, and fruit trees grow. In autumn, all the fruits ripen when the creative energy of the phases is reduced. When the functioning of the phases is low, they begin to mutually restrain one another. Because the sap and so on gradually descends, the trees, grasses, and fruits dry up, and all sentient beings decline and darken. In the winter, all the sap and so on is low and in decline, and the active energies of the phases mutually extinguish each other. From then on, the phases become stronger, and one by one produce each other as above. Thus we have explained the way in which sentient beings, who are the internal life of the universe, originate. 3. The hidden level. Now we shall explain the hidden level. All the happiness and frustration of samsara and nirvana are produced by the 5 causal creative potencies that are the very essence of the active aspect of the phases. This is just like the case in which the flesh, blood, warmth, breath, and mental activity belonging to the body are produced and nourished with the energy of fruits, flowers, and grasses that are the active aspect of the phases. Although pristine awareness exists within us from the very beginning, we don't recognize it. Therefore, by latching onto concepts of affirmation and negation regarding the creative energy of pristine awareness, there is the split into samsara and nirvana. One enters into the mother's womb by lack of pure presence. Then, by the combination of the causal creative potencies of the parents and the pristine awareness that belongs to pure presence, the body is formed. Further, the body is born with the mutual assistance of the 5 phases. When one eats food, it is digested by the fire phase. Its active and residual parts are separated by the wind phase. It is synthesized by the water phase, and it is hardened by the earth phase. This produces the strength of the body. The active part pervades all the energetic pathways of the body. Further, this active part increases from birth, and the creative energy operates harmoniously until men and women are 30 years old. In this way, the active energy settles in the bodily constitution. The coarse aspect of this creative energy, together with the natural radiance of pure presence, establishes the beauty, corpulence, and level of activity of the body. From age 30 to 40, the active energy maintains itself, but from then on, the 5 phases mutually restrain one another. The bodily oils become hardened, and therefore the active aspect dries up. All the organ functions become impaired, and one declines and ages. The span of life is established because the phases have become disturbed in their functioning. Therefore, it is very important to work with the energy of the phases when one is young. This is the way in which the body functions on the hidden level. Four, working with the more hidden level. The more hidden level is worked with in the following way. The happiness and frustration of all the interdependent relations of nirvana and samsara are produced by the causal creative potencies. Therefore, these causal potencies are the very essence of the active energy of the phases. Because the causal creative potencies are the basis of the existence of the creative potency of pristine awareness, it is very important to increase them and not impair them. Now, as to increasing them, there is the natural process of increase, and there is the increase that occurs by relying on a partner as a special condition. In both these circumstances, it is necessary to have the essential controlling point or method. If one does not, internal and external obstacles can arise. Increasing the creative potency without a sexual partner. First, the natural process of increase is as follows. The causal creative potency, which is the active aspect of the phases, gradually increases from the first day of the lunar month. At this time, it expands into the constitution from the energetic configuration at the sex organs. So then one should visualize the dakini of the Kama family in sexual embrace, symbolic of the active aspect of the phases, within the nexus at the center of the energetic configuration at the sex organs, known as the pleasure-maintaining energetic configuration. Pleasing and beautiful ornaments, indicative of the full richness of being, ornament the dakini. From the point of sexual union, the 5 colors of the active aspect of the phases each radiate uninterruptedly. This radiation fills the nexus of that energetic configuration, and from there pervades all the energetic pathways of the body. This fills the whole body with the creative potency of the pure and total presence generated by innumerable such dakinis in sexual embrace. One should imagine this as unwavering pleasure. One should also imagine such pleasure arising from all the dakas in sexual union, filling the body like a jar full of seeds, while also imagining that their creative potency of pure and total presence fills each of the pores of the body. By doing this, the phases are harmonized, and illness cannot arise. The expansion of their active aspect gives rise to meditative experience of the unity of pleasure and emptiness, the completion of countless accumulations of merit, a good constitution, enjoyments, healthy old age, the energizing power of dakas and dakinis, as well as the mundane and supreme accomplishments. Thus one ought to meditate. Next, the active aspect increases upward, expanding to the navel by the 4th day of the month. One should imagine the dakas and dakinis of the Lotus family at the nexus of the energetic configuration of the navel. As of the 8th day, one should imagine the dakas and dakinis of the Buddha family at the heart. As of the 12th day, one should imagine the dakas and dakinis of the jewel family at the throat. As of the 15th of the month, the energy expands to the crown of the head, and so one imagines the dakas and dakinis of the Vajra family at the nexus of the energetic configuration there. The visualization is as above. Because the phases are expanding upward to the crown, whatever merits one accumulates are increased, and for this reason, one shouldn't apply bleeding or burning treatments there. While experiences may increase or decrease, because one's capacities, senses, and bodhicitta, which ought not to be eliminated, are expanding, one can massage a shaved place at the crown of one's head with a mixture of sesame oil, sandalwood, and musk. Thus the phases of the body won't be in conflict, and illness won't arise. If one does not do this, the active aspect of the phases will be disturbed and won't expand to the crown of the head. Because the phases won't be in harmony, disease can arise. Then, after this, the active aspect of the phases expands downward. By the 19th of the lunar month, it has expanded to the throat, by the 22nd to the heart, by the 25th to the navel, by the 28th to the sex organs, and by the 30th to the soles of the feet. At these times, one should proceed as above. One can apply a mixture of various oils, honey, and nutmeg to the soles of the feet, as well as warm them in the sun. Thus the phases won't be disturbed, and one won't fall ill. Through the growing of the phases, the positive will increase. Through the increase of the active aspect of the phases, experiences of the unity of pleasure and emptiness will arise, and one will make oneself fit to practice with a partner. Based on this natural process of increase of the active aspect of the phases, one can add the secondary ingredient of such an objective support. Increasing the creative potency using a suitable partner. Second, the explanation on how to increase the active aspect of the phases by relying on a suitable partner as a special condition has two parts. One, learning through establishing one's ability to work with one's energy, and two, learning according to the path of passion itself. Here, the path of passion itself will be learned. First, one must meet with a suitable partner who has the esoteric empowerment and imagines themselves as a deity. So, at the time of intercourse, when passionate attachment and the concepts associated with it arise, this is experienced as the creative energy of pristine awareness. For a Dzogchen perspective on empowerment, see Part 2, Chapter 5. If one does not know this, it is just attachment. Transforming this into pristine awareness means that by working with passionate attachment itself, passionate attachment is purified. When one first thinks of uniting with the partner, the bodily fluids that arise are the movement of the motile energy of the water phase. Water itself is the female polarity of Buddhahood, known as mamaki. Next, one should find the energetic point of arousal of the partner and awaken it. Sometimes one can massage one's partner with honey and beer. When one moves the sex organs, there is enjoyment and warmth. This heat is the fire phase, which is the female polarity of Buddhahood, Pandaravasini. Her pristine awareness is that of supreme enjoyment. The hardening of the sex organs produces pleasure. This hardness is the earth phase, which is the female pole of Buddhahood, Buddha Lochana. The movements and positions of the body also produce pleasure. This movement is the wind phase and the female aspect of Buddhahood, Samayatara. When one moves and this pleasure arises, one should visualize as above at the nexuses of the 5 energetic configurations, arousing pleasure and proceeding as before. By doing this, the active energy of the crown flows down, generating the pristine awareness of enjoyment at the throat, the pristine awareness of supreme enjoyment at the heart, the pristine awareness beyond enjoyment at the navel, and the pristine awareness that in its very arising is primordially pure at the sex organs. The active energies move within the energetic pathways, mutually assisting one another, thus giving rise to innumerable enjoyments. When one's creative potency extends down to the navel with the accompanying pleasure, it is necessary to return it upward. One can say "hic" 3 times, imagine it going back up, roll the eyes upward, apply the hold of pulling up from below and pressing down from above, touch the tongue to the palate, contract the toes, press the thumb with the ring finger, press the 2 middle fingers together firmly, and direct one's awareness to the crown of the head. In this way, it is impossible not to retain one's creative potency. Then one can generate pleasure again, and if one cannot retain it in this way, one can press the 0.4 wingefits from the base of the sex organ with one's right ring finger. Thus there will be no outflow, even though the creative potency is completely in the sex organs. One returns the active aspect of the energy thus retained upward and scatters it through the eyes. Some claim that the energy is returned upward through the contributory condition of an object of concentration, such as the pupils. This is not so. The unique controlling point is the utilization of the active aspect of energy and mind together. Doing this, one stores the active energy within. At the time of retaining the active energy, relax the mind in a state beyond concepts. In this way, holding and scattering can happen at the same time. This is very profound. See Introduction, page 7. In general, there are 16 aspects of creative potency. There are 8 forms that are returned upward from the sex organs, even though there is no action of holding. These are known as the active aspect that generates the bodily constituents and life energy. Therefore, until one dies, they remain in the body. At the time of death, they do not remain, and there is death. There are 2 forms that are the residual part of the creative potency. That which is not returned upward even when one tries to return it upward, and that which is not retained even when one tries to retain it. These are the sexual fluids that are generated at the time of passionate attachment. It is like cow's saliva. There is no benefit or harm in it whatsoever. There are 6 aspects of creative potency to be retained in the practice of passion. There is an active aspect and a residual aspect. These are the white aspect that concretely arises. Within the white aspect there are 6 forms that are like small greenish seeds, the size of a pupil of an eye. These are the seeds for generating a trulku. The creative potency of the mother is like a laksha flower, small and oily, and when it predominates, a boy is conceived. The white residual aspect of the active energy is what comes out of the vagina. Practitioners ought to retain all of the active aspect, but because these 6 seed-like forms of the active aspect of the active energy may not be retained in one's practice, it is necessary to make a special effort to retain all of them. All of a human being's highest capacities come from these, 6 seed-like forms. The white residual aspect of the active energy merely produces the fleshy parts of the body. The causal creative potency, which is the active aspect of the 4 phases, is present within all the definable and indefinable pathways of energy radiating from the 5 energetic configurations through the special condition of contact with a sexual partner. This gives rise to pleasure. The active aspect of the 4 phases is the creative activity of the movement of pristine awareness inherent in pure presence. This movement is all-pervasive. By making the phases mutually support one another, the creative potency gradually moves to the energetic configurations from the brain. When it arrives at the sex organs, pleasure subsides and the phases are harmonized. At this time, when one uses a visualized object to retain and return the creative potency, it coils up into a form at the place of one's visualization. If one does not harmonize the active aspect of the energy of the 4 phases, illness arises. Therefore, as long as the potency has not reached the sex organs from the brain and right-hand pathway, one should visualize the 5 energetic configurations as above. This harmonizes the power of the phases, increases their active energy, and prevents illness from arising. By relaxing the mind in a state beyond concepts and bringing the creative potency to the sex organs, the creative potency will go to its natural place. Therefore, the highest capacities will be found within this great pleasure. This pleasure is immeasurable, and it will increase the active aspect of energy. Stable and pure states of concentration will arise, and through these states the joyous, pristine awareness of contemplation will also arise. The active energy will gradually fill the 4 energetic configurations, and one will realize various common accomplishments, such as the 8 great siddhis, Sanskrit. The supreme accomplishment of contemplation that unites pleasure and emptiness will arise, and when one teaches the 6 realms of sentient beings, the highest capacities of Buddhahood will be complete. Pristine awareness will be stabilized. The impure dimension will fade into Buddhahood. If there are some errors in the wording here, intelligent people ought to investigate them. With this instruction, may the path of passion be learned, and the active energy of one's phases increased and protected. This is the instruction on experiencing the more hidden level. (5) The final stage. How to heal illnesses by harmonizing the phases. Now the explanation of working on the final stage. Illness comes about in our body, which is produced from the active aspect of the 4 phases, as follows. The causal creative potency of the components of the body is mixed with the active energy of the phases and is found in each. Therefore, these are completely pervaded with movement, which can be shown to produce illness through the 6 contributory conditions. When passionate attachment is the contributory condition, warm disease arises. Because the power of fire and wind increase when this warmth arises, the phases are disturbed, and there is illness. Further, when anger and unhappiness act as a motivating cause, wind arises, thereby increasing their power. Once again, the phases are disturbed, and there is illness. Dullness acting as a motivating cause generates phlegm and cold. This increases the power of the water phase, disturbing the balance of the phases, and disease results. Illness comes about whenever the disharmony becomes great enough. Whenever the functioning of one of the three primary constituents is low, one falls ill. Whenever two are low or high, one falls ill. When they are neither high nor low but equal, illness cannot come about. There is no human being who does not have a greater or lesser predominance of a phase. Sleeping during the day generally acts as a contributory condition for illness. Therefore, if a person with a predominance of wind falls asleep during the day, they get a wind illness. Further, the wind can be combined with either heat or cold. If a person with a predominance of earth sleeps during the day, they generate phlegm, which can in turn be associated with heat or cold disease. If a person with a predominance of water sleeps during the day, they can get a cold disease, which can in turn be associated with a warm or cold illness. If a person with a predominance of fire sleeps during the day, they generate heat, which can in turn be associated with a warm or cold illness. Therefore, sleeping during the day increases the power of the active energy of whatever phase is predominant. When the phases are disharmonized, they begin to oppose one another. The disturbing phase produces the illness that is characterized by that phase itself. Therefore, one ought to avoid sleeping during the day. Improper eating and behavior, which disorders the phases and leads to illness, should also be eliminated. In general, obsessing over thoughts associated with the conflicting emotions disturbs the active energy of the four phases. Because this generates illness, one ought to neutralize them in the fundamental dimension of embodiment, rather than letting any of the five poisonous conflicting emotions that have arisen become habitual. Further, because the active aspects of the four phases are based on the proper functioning of the stomach, when these are disturbed, they dry up and generate all illnesses. Therefore, the palpable warmth of the radiance of fire, symbolized by the lotus dakini in sexual embrace at the center of the generative energetic configuration at the navel, grows faint. By concentrating on this, the active aspect of the four phases in the form of fire arises from the point of sexual union, and one thereby can imagine that this fills all the pathways radiating from the energetic configuration at the navel. The movement associated with the active aspect of the four phases as a whole generates the heat of the stomach, and because of this, one cannot be harmed by any illness. Also, in the case of womb disease, from the point of the union of the cool, white, water-like Vajra dakini in sexual embrace at the hub in the center of the energetic configuration of bliss at the crown of the head, the active aspect of the phases descends in a water-like form. One should imagine that its coolness descends into all the energetic pathways. By descending into the pathways where heat illness is present, imagine that the heat dissipates outward. Then imagine moon disks at the center of white lotuses that are equal in number to the energy pathways below the navel. At their centers, imagine an equal number of principal dakinis as above, from whose point of sexual contact the active aspect of the phases in a palpably cool form fills the area below the navel. In this way, all warm diseases will be quickly healed. If you wish, you can unite the illness into this cool, active aspect with highly focused concentration, and then obliterate it with the creative energy of wind movement and fire. In the case of a composite illness, generate the dakini of the Buddha family in sexual embrace at the center of the Dharma energetic configuration at the heart. Then generate such figures in all energetic pathways radiating from the heart, and then in all the energetic pathways of the body. Imagine that the nectar of pristine awareness, the active aspect of the phases, flows from the points of their sexual union, filling the whole body like milk. Hold the breath a bit, applying holds from below and above. Meditate for 3 days on expelling the disease out of the body, as if it were a sieve or transparent medium, as before. Composite diseases are thereby removed. Further, in the case of cold diseases, imagine a red lotus at the energetic configuration of the navel. On this, imagine the orb of the sun, together with its rays. Then imagine the active aspect of phases in the form of palpably hot fire, flowing downward from the point of sexual contact of the Dakini of the Lotus family residing there. Imagine that the space below the navel is filled with a circle of fire turning to the right. Breathe fiercely to make it rotate. In this way, all cold illnesses are removed. For wind disease, imagine a dark green Dakini of the Kama family in sexual union at the places where the wind is hidden. Then imagine that one's visualization enters the coarse and darkened creative potency there. Thereby, wind illness is removed. When the phases are disordered, their active aspect dries up and disease enters. Therefore, concentrate as above with whatever visualization is applicable wherever disease, such as a wound and so forth, is found. This will harmonize the phases, bring the active aspect of their energy there, and thus cure the illness. Thus, one should know the visualizations for all types of illnesses. By so doing, one can solidly obtain direct knowledge of pure presence, quickly, and without bodily obstacles. I, Padma of Ujjain, have composed this in the cave on top of Rust Mountain. Without spreading it everywhere, I make it an experience for myself. Profoundly sealed away, secretly sealed away as a treasure, sealed away by the Dakini. This is good. (3) The meaning of a section of hidden instruction, the innermost essence of the Dakini. Our second text, a section of hidden instruction, the innermost essence of the Dakini, is a more comprehensive treatment of the 5 phases. It includes a presentation of the view of Dzogchen, found in the Upadesha teachings, and quotes from several important Upadesha tantras. It begins like the first text, with a discussion of how the natural environment, consisting of 5 processes of earth, water, fire, wind, and space, arises from the primordial ground of being. Here, the nature of this universal ground of being is discussed. What is the nature of this ground itself, independent of how it gives rise to both samsara and nirvana? According to the Dzogchen teachings, the ground has a structure, known as its essence, nature, and energy. Its essence is emptiness, its nature is radiant clarity, and its energy is pure presence. This ground is also the basis of going astray into samsara. The 5-fold essential instruction states that the 5 physical phases that we experience are concretizations of their spontaneous glimmering in 5 hues within the primordial ground. this section explains how this concretization occurs. When, with the creative energy of pure presence, which is an energetic response to what is present, one concretizes these hues, one goes astray, because one does not understand them as both a lucid presence and as nothing. By appropriating the presence of these 5 hues into one's existence as a thing, one goes astray into a conceptualized essence. By appropriating the presence of these 5 spontaneous hues, the 5 external phases arise, as in the view of the heretics, in which they are taken as eternal. How does this Dzogchen view of reality explain our present situation in samsara, especially rebirth in a human body? A new body is created after the bardo state, intermediate state between death and life, including the stages of gestation of the fetus and the womb, by the interaction of the active and concretizing functions of the 5 phases. How the subtle body arises with its chakras and channels is also discussed, not only from the perspective of Tantrism in general, but from the special viewpoint of Dzogchen. Padmasambhava states, "In other teachings, there are many explanations of how the pathways, energy, and creative potency are 3 different things. Here these 3 are held to be indivisible. The 5 phases arise through primordial, spontaneous presence, and the energy of mistaken response to it. The body is produced from this, then the pathways, then energy, which creative potency pervades. Pristine awareness pervades all of this and is indivisible. The Tantra of self-generating pure presence states, the body is pervaded by great pristine awareness, like oil in a sesame seed. How the pristine awareness that belongs to pure presence is actually present in the body is discussed in detail. The body is a Buddha field, where the 5 phases manifest their enlightened dimension through the channels and chakras. But in the Dzogchen teachings, there are special channels and potencies not discussed in Tantrism, related to the experiences of lamps and Vajra chains mentioned here. These are direct manifestations of Buddhahood, associated with the Cargill practices of the Upadesha. Padmasambhava does not avoid the obvious question. Now, if in this treatise it is claimed that the mandala of Buddhahood is indivisible from the pathways, energy, and potency of the aggregate of the body composed of the phases, then would Buddhahood also be something relative? To which he answers, while all sentient beings and their worlds are relative and impermanent, the Buddha mandala is free from conditioned existence, and the body, according to this teaching, is concretely held to be a Buddha mandala. The essential point is that it is not something relative. The whole generation of the perishable world arises from the delusion of lack of pure presence, which is itself the creative energy of pristine awareness. This is the essential point that distinguishes this instruction. The remainder of a section of hidden instruction, the innermost essence of the Dakini, clarifies some of the esoteric practices of the 5-fold essential instruction. The colophon states, this experiential core instruction from the cycle of essential teachings was put in writing on top of Rust Mountain and memorized by Yeshe Tsogyal. May it meet with someone who can use it. Thus, a section of hidden oral instruction of the Dakini is completed. 4. Translation of a section of hidden instruction, the innermost essence of the Dakini. 1. Presentation of the initial ground of being. 1a. The universal ground of being. Universal refers to what is elevated, in which there is no division into either samsara or nirvana. The Blazing Lamp Tantra states, "The great primordial initial purity is just so, not made by anyone, self-luminous. From the beginning it is just itself." This initial ground, which cannot be found as samsara or nirvana, is an open luminosity free from any extent or dimension. Further, its essence is empty, its nature is radiant clarity, and its energy is unceasing. The Sun and Moon Tantra states, "There are 3 modes of pristine awareness present in the ground. Its essence is the pristine awareness of primordial purity. Its nature is the pristine awareness of spontaneous presence. Its energy is the pristine awareness of dualistic manifestation." Therefore, one does not speak of many modes of pristine awareness other than these 3 present in the ground. Further, the Garland of Pearls Tantra states, "Although one speaks of the nature of reality having many facets, pristine awareness has 3. In this ground, neither delusion nor non-delusion can be found." The Tantra Without Letters states, "Since in me, self-arising pristine awareness is primordially pure, one is beyond the limits of is and is not." The Penetrating the Essence of Sound Tantra states, "Since lack of pure presence does not exist in the pristine awareness of the primordial purity of the ground's essence, it is beyond enumerations of 1 and 2. Indivisible, in its being it cannot even be found as pristine awareness. Its spontaneous actuality is called pristine awareness. It is unborn, unceasing, and inconceivable, since there is no determining it as an object. Since its qualities and creativity are unceasing, it is the ground that completes everything as a mere playful manifestation. The pristine awareness of its all-encompassing energy is the gate for the arising of unceasing variety. The appearance of cessation is perfect in being the ground's essence." The Tantra of the 6 Spheres states, "Pristine awareness itself has 3 aspects. This distinction in the ground is a verbal one. The pristine awareness of the primordial purity of the ground's essence is free from the stain of loss of pure presence. The pristine awareness of the spontaneous presence of the ground's nature is free from the danger of delusory language. The pristine awareness of the ground's all-encompassing energy manifests by unifying everything into 1 dimension. Moreover, these 3 modes of pristine awareness are indivisible." The Penetrating the Essence of Sound Tantra states, "From its own side, pristine awareness is indivisible, although its modes are 3. Further, it is not an entity. It is empty, radiant, intelligent, and unchanging. It is also limitless." The Tantra of Self-Generating Pure Presence states, "Beyond the 2 extremes of eternalism and nihilism." And the Tantra of Self-Generating Pure Presence states, "Intrinsically cleansed of the stain of the 4 extremes, in the ground neither delusion, non-delusion, and so forth can be found. This is the presentation of the universal primordial ground. 1b. The ground of going astray. Now the explanation of how going astray arises from the ground of being. One goes astray because one does not understand the three facets of pristine awareness as what appears and as one's own pure presence. Further, one does not understand one's own pure presence as the three dimensions of being. As the Radiant Sphere Tantra states regarding this going astray, from pristine awareness itself, there is going astray into lack of pure presence. Although there is no going astray in the ground of being, one goes astray due to a loss of pure presence, which is like a dream, an apparition, or a lion drowning in water. Moreover, the Garland of Pearls Tantra states, although the ground of going astray has many explanations, they are summed up with the terms spontaneous presence, lundra, and integrative responsiveness, dukje. The intrinsic illumination that is the essence of the ground shines in a spontaneous halo of 5 hues. When, with the creative energy of pure presence, which is an energetic response to what is present, one concretizes these hues, one goes astray because one does not understand them as both a lucid presence and nothing. By appropriating the presence of these 5 hues into one's existence as a thing, one goes astray into a conceptualized essence. By appropriating the presence of these 5 spontaneous hues, the 5 external phases arise, as in the view of the heretics, in which they are taken as eternal. Furthermore, pure presence is the seed of everything. For example, it is like a wish-fulfilling gem, because it brings about what we intend. The 5 phases originate as follows. Because the hues that intrinsically belong to pristine awareness are taken as entities by integrative responsiveness, they are established as something concrete. The phase of space arises when the presence of the blue hue of the pristine awareness of totality is appropriated. In the same way, the phase of water arises from the mirror-like awareness, earth from the awareness of sameness, fire from the discriminating awareness, and wind from the all-accomplishing awareness. These arise when there is an appropriation of the luminosity that belongs to pristine awareness as a this. These 5 phases, which possess a creative dynamism, all come about because they are pervaded with the creative dynamism of a loss of pure presence. This creative dynamism of the loss of pure presence is known as the pervasive wind. The phases have their individual functions because they are pervaded and energized with this wind. The beings and their environments in the perishable world systems originate from the 5 phases as follows. In the expanse of space, a double Vajra-shaped wind arises. On this, an ocean of water arises. On this, the golden earth arises. On this, Mount Meru and the 4 continents arise. These are not born or manufactured, although they arise from the motivating cause of going astray due to a lack of pure presence. They are spontaneously self-originating because they remain the functioning of the pristine awareness that sustains them. Sentient beings and their environments originate from these as follows. In this world system that is established from the 5 phases, there arise the 5 hues, which are the creative dynamism of pristine awareness. From the yellow hue, the life form of the gods originates. From the green hue, the life form of the Titans originates. From the red hue, the life form of animals originates. From the white hue, the life form of hell beings originates. And from the grey hue, the life form of spirits originates. The creative dynamism of these gives rise to innumerable sentient beings. The sun, moon, and stars originate from the sustaining power of pristine awareness and the collective merits of sentient beings. Because these 5 hues originate from the active energy of the 5 phases, sentient beings are called the internal quintessence of the environment. These beings are the result that is produced by the initial and motivating cause of a loss of pure presence. Because samsara is just this loss of pure presence, it neither increases nor is it destroyed. Thus, the way in which sentient beings are the internal quintessence of their environments has been demonstrated. 2. How things are in the midst of our present situation. Now we shall set forth how things are in our present situation. Of the 6 life forms, it is important to discuss the human body in particular, because it is the basis for Buddhahood, without which the latter will not come about. 2a. The stages in the gestation of the body. From the active energy of the 4 phases that are characterized by a loss of pure presence, sentient beings are born after the form of their father and mother, who represent the aspects of appropriate structure and intelligent functioning. Further, the active energies of the 5 phases ensure the full development of all parts of the body. While the body forms the basis for pure presence, the loss of this awareness manifests as the 5 poisons and the 6 aggregates. As the Garland of Pearls Tantra states, since the mind in its 6 modes subjectively latches onto things incessantly, even the fundamental dimension of reality is imprisoned in its grasp. So here, one relishes the experiences generated by the force of the distorting passions, and in conjunction with the active energy of the phases, pleasure arises. Then, having generated attachment to this in oneself, one engages in intercourse. Then countless disembodied sentient beings gather there by the force of jaundice-like lack of pure presence. One enters into the womb, and its body develops. By putting this attachment into practice, samsara flourishes abundantly, and one wanders there through old age and death. Further, at the time of death, when each phase separately vanishes into another, the manifestations of pristine awareness that arise in the bardo are not recognized. Then, in the bardo of existence, through the jaundice-like ignorance regarding the parents in intercourse, mind and motility get caught up in desire as long as the active energies of the phases are mixed together by the harmonization of the parents' pleasure. Thereby, one enters into a limited form. That is, one is enveloped in the womb. With the 2 creative potencies and the mixing of mind and motility acting as cause and conditions, the 4 phases take on their functions on the relative level. Mind and motility are the functions of the 4 phases on the ultimate level. The stages in the gestation of the fetus can be divided into 7 or 8. 1. Oval, mermer. 2. Viscous, nurnur. 3. Fleshy, gorgor. 4. Elliptical, tata. 5. Hardened, trungjur. 6. Dwarf-like, Kyabjuk, 7 turtle-like, Rubal, and 8 frog-like, Balpa, or fish-like, Nia. The first stage lasts 7 days. In the first 4 days, the activity of each phase develops. In the 5th and 6th days, 2 of these phases are combined, and in the last day, all 4 phases function together. In the first day of this oval stage, the water phase functions to unify the oval form after 4 hours into a mass the size of 100 tiny seeds, which is the basis of this stage. Second, the function of the earth phase condenses the oval form into the size of 10 tiny seeds. Third, action of the fire phase makes the oval form into an unmixed drop the size of 30 tiny seeds. Fourth, the action of the wind phase disperses the drop, dividing the seeds like quicksilver. Fifth, the oval form is stabilized again through the cohesive action of the water phase. Sixth, the oval form is matured and developed by the fire phase into 2 tiny seeds. Seventh, through the combined action of the 4, in the drop of the 2 seeds, a single subtle oval-like eye is formed. Then, once again, the oval form is stirred up by the action of the phases. Water breaks, earth presses, and fire condenses the oval form. Thereby, its oval form is burned and scattered by the wind into formlessness. Then, once again, through the functioning of the phases, on the 8th day, water condenses the developing fetus into the viscous stage, in which a mass the size of 10 grains forms a single energy pathway to the east, the size of a piece of rabbit dung. Once again, on the 9th day, it is mixed by the earth phase into a mass the size of 9 grains, forming the energy pathway to the south. Then, on the 10th day, the fire phase produces a mass the size of 7 grains, forming the energy pathway to the west. On the 11th day, it is stirred up by the wind phase into a mass the size of 5 grains, forming the energy pathway to the north. Then, as above, with the phases acting 2 at a time, the viscous stage generates the 2 eyes and the energy pathways like threads. Again, through the agitating action of the 4 phases, the earth phase breaks it up after a fortnight, producing 2 seeds the size of a thumb. Then it is broken up by the wind, and all of the viscous form is divided, before water condenses and earth solidifies it, thus transforming it into the fleshy stage. The viscous form is matured by fire producing the energy pathways of the 4 energetic configurations and the pathway that is the basis for the sense organs. The first energetic configuration has 64 branches. The energetic configuration at the 3rd eye, the focal point of clarity, is the basis of mind and motility and has 32 branches. The increase of fire produces the 62 pathways of the taste, unifying energetic configuration. From this, the peak operating configuration with 360 branching pathways, as well as the 2 eyes, matures. Then the agitation of the wind phase differentiates each one's causal action. The fleshy stage of the fetus is brought together by fire mixed with earth, and by being condensed, it is hardened into a single mass. The maturing action of fire produces the 3 channels, with the one in the center like a pillar. Then again, through the functions of the phases, the developing fetus is hardened into the fish-like stage. Thus, in 7 days, the fish-like stage assumes this form through the cohesive action of water. Earth condenses it, fire matures it, and the sense organs appear. The water phase produces the clarity of the sense organs. The earth hardens and forms the fetus into a turtle-like form, filling the mother's womb. Fire produces the limbs. The collecting action of wind is incorporated into the central pathway. At this time, because the phases, which are the foundation of embodiment, are in harmony, pristine awareness is generated. Then, with water acting as a maturing cause, the condensing action of earth produces flesh and blood, generating a frog-like form. Fire brings clarity to the eyes and consciousness, and the limbs are further developed. Molly, shh! The wind phase makes for the clarity and lack of clarity of the limbs, the sense organs, the base of perception in the heart, as well as the aggregate base and field of consciousness. Thus there arise all the proper functions and defects of consciousness, sense organs, limbs, and so on, and the distinction between normal and abnormal. Positive or deleterious actions during pregnancy can affect the functioning of the phases of the mother. Thus, having originated in the womb, after developing through 7 or 8 stages, a human being is born. The active aspect of what is eaten and drunk by the mother, having entered at the navel pathway, generates the skin and hair in the early stages. The passions are latent, and the wind phase makes for shaking and throbbing. Fire increases consciousness, so that at 3 months and 21 days, body and mind are active. Also at this stage there is taste, and by the combined activity of the 4 phases, there is differentiation and maturation, so that the whole body and its limbs can move. 2 months and 26 days later, the fetus is viable. This is the Nirmāṇakāya. The Radiant Sphere Tantra states, the meaning of having entered the womb is the Nirmāṇakāya. The Garland of Pearls Tantra states, the great bliss of pure presence. Pure and total presence, through the union of appropriate function and intelligence, is produced by the projective movement out of the causal factor of father and mother. The seed, whose cause is the 5 phases, is the objective manifestation of emptiness. By the blissful harmony of the 2, there is the intelligence of appropriate function and the entry into the womb. This is the manifestation of pure presence from the ground. It has 7 or 8 stages, progressing through 10 lunar months. Birth is the coming about of the Nirmāṇakāya. In this Nirmāṇakāya, the body and its energetic pathways are established at the same time. They are equal to the number of hair pores in the body, that is, 82,000. The generator energetic configuration at the navel has 64 spokes. The memory configuration at the heart has 32. The taste configuration at the throat has 16. The peak configuration at the forehead has 360. And the pleasure regulating configuration at the crown has 28. Thus, the 5 energetic configurations have a total of 500 pathways connected to them. In the midst of these are 3 vertical pathways like pillars. A branch of these is known as the crystalline. The Penetrating the Essence of Sound Tantra states, Roma, lunar, Kyangma, solar, Kundama, central, and Kati Shelbuk. As to which phases generate these four pathways, the energetic aspect of water generates Roma, earth generates Kyangma, wind generates Kundama, and fire generates Kati Shelbuk. Within Roma, the causal creative potency moves downward. In a man it is to the right, and in a woman it is to the left. Similarly, the Kyangma is reversed according to sex. Within this, the creative potency of pristine awareness moves. The Roma turns to the left from the navel and extends to the penis, enabling the creative potency to descend. The Kyangma extends to the left from the pathways at the heart up to the network of pathways at the throat. From there it divides into two upper pathways and enters into the brain. These channels, which are like the horns of an ox, extend to the pupils of the eyes and are responsible for visions due to pristine awareness. Kundama is straight and is located along the center of the body. At its peak it divides into three. The central one enters the aperture of Brahma, while the right and left ones enter the ears. Within these pathways is the energy. We can classify it into two categories: karmic energy and the energy of pristine awareness. The energy of pristine awareness is mixed with mind. Mind is mixed with karmic energy. Therefore, they are inseparable. The penetrating the essence of sound Tantra states, mind and energy are mixed non-dually. Therefore, energy produces all forms of karma. The energy of pristine awareness is itself unmoving. Its creative functioning is called karmic energy. There is energetic movement. The movement of earth takes 5,400 forms. Likewise, the movement of fire, water, and wind, making for 21,600 forms of energetic movement. The penetrating the essence of sound Tantra states, the energies that are based on creative functioning have 21,600 forms of movement. This is known as the energy of great movement. The energy of pristine awareness also moves within the pathways. As the penetrating the essence of sound Tantra states, true movement within the pathways has 126,600 forms. By this movement, there is what is known as the energy of subtle movement. The functions of these pathways are the functions of samsara and nirvana, happiness and frustration, upward and downward movement. Further, within the pathways are the energies, and these are everywhere pervaded with the creative potencies. These can be divided into two: the causal creative potency and the pristine awareness creative potency. The explanation of the 16 forms of the causal creative potency and the 3 forms of pristine awareness creative potency can be seen elsewhere. The functions of these potencies are the functions of samsara and nirvana, frustration and happiness. In other teachings, there are many explanations of how the pathways, energy, and creative potency are 3 different things. Here, these 3 are held to be indivisible. By primordial spontaneous presence and the energy of mistaken response to it, the 5 phases arise. The body is produced from this, then the pathways, then energy, which creative potency pervades. Pristine awareness pervades all of this and is indivisible. The Tantra of self-generating pure presence states, "The body is pervaded with great pristine awareness like oil in a sesame seed. The luster and radiance of the body come from the moisture of pristine awareness pervading it." 2b. How the pristine awareness that belongs to primordial intelligence is present in the body. This presentation has two aspects. 1. The body as a Buddha field. 2. How primordial intelligence itself is present. 2b. The body as a Buddha field. Within the 5 energetic configurations within the energetic pathways of the body, the active energies of the 5 phases obtained from the father and mother reside in the form of letters, self-effulgent in the 5 hues of pristine awareness, like quicksilver and the pilu flower. Ha and Ra are at the forehead, Ri and Sa at the throat, Nam and Hri at the heart, Ni and Hri at the navel, Sa and Ya at the secret place. These form the basis of primordial intelligence maturing externally into the 5 poisons, while internally they form the basis for the 5 forms of pristine awareness manifesting through their purification. Within the centers of the 3 primary channels are Om, Ah, and Hum. Externally, these form the basis of appearing in their impure mode as the 3 poisons, while internally they form the basis of appearing in their pure mode as the 3 fundamental dimensions of reality. Therefore, this body, in its relative existence, is a Buddha mandala. The Radiant Sphere Tantra states, "The creativity of error arises from the primordial ground. In the mandala of the body in which the phases are combined, the active energy and its pathways are indivisible. In this, the letters, which are the seeds of Buddhahood, are present. The male and female aspects are present in the 5 energetic configurations. Out of the 3 primary pathways, solar, lunar, and all-encompassing, the 3 dimensions manifest. While externally there are the 5 aggregates of form, feeling, judgment, motivation, and consciousness, internally there are the 5 poisonous pollutants. Secretly, there are the 5 dimensions of existence. More secretly, there are the 5 modes of pristine knowledge, while externally there are the 5 phases. Internally, there are the 5 female aspects of Buddhahood. Secretly, there are the 5 dakinis. More secretly, there are the 5 modes of appreciative knowledge. While externally there are the 5 energetic configurations, internally there are their 5 creative potencies, the active energy of the phases. Secretly there are the 5 letters, Hri, Ha, Ri, Ni, Sa. More secretly there are the 5 dakinis. All the constituents and energetic pathways of the body are a Buddha field of dakas and dakinis, its male and female aspects. This actual body is a Buddha mandala. Therefore, because one's body is a Buddha mandala, when one makes an internal offering rather than an external one of desirable things, the merit is increased 1,000-fold. Meditating on an external divine symbolic form and making external offerings means that one does not recognize this divinity within, and this is deleterious. Why? Because the body is a Buddha mandala. Speech is mantra, and whatever passions arise are actually pristine awareness manifesting. The two aspects of creative potency produce the variety of samsara and nirvana. If one does not develop the creative potency of pristine awareness, one wanders in samsara. If one does, there is Buddhahood without any residue. If one damages the causal creative potency, one transgresses one's commitments, giving rise to much that is not virtuous, and one is reborn in hell. If one does not damage it, one accumulates all transcendent and immanent capacities, is inseparable from all the Buddhas, generates all happiness and blessings, and does not generate all the obstacles created by non-virtue. In short, one generates all the ordinary and extraordinary accomplishments. By increasing one's capacities and strengthening one's constitution, one masters the creative potency of pristine awareness, leading to indestructible Buddhahood. 2b2. How primordial intelligence itself is present. Pure presence is present in the fundamental dimension of one's embodiment. In the heart, there are the 42 peaceful manifestations of Buddhahood. In the head, the 58 wrathful manifestations. In the 5 energetic configurations, the Dakas and Dakinis. In the 3 primary pathways, the 3 fundamental dimensions of reality. In all the energetic pathways and constituents of the body, the Dakas and Dakinis are present like a heap of seeds. The nature of one's body is radiant light. Secretly, within the 5 energetic configurations, there is a pathway that extends like a white silk thread, though it contains no matter or blood. From the genital region, it extends to the navel. From the navel to the heart, from the heart to the throat, and from the throat to the brain. Within the head, from 4 pathways that turn to the right, there is a single pathway that makes for the appearance of sensory object domains. Dividing into 5, it provides the basis for the individual senses. This pathway that makes for the clarity of the senses, their strengths and defects, enters the eyes to the pupils. Thus, there is a subjective experience of samsara and nirvana. How the energy of our primordial state shines like a lamp is explained in the Tantra of self-generating pure presence. 4 lamps shine in the openness of unconditioned space. The lamp of the eyes, the lamp of the openness of creative potency, the lamp of self-generating pristine awareness, and the lamp of the pure field of reality. The characteristics of these objective manifestations are given in the Tantra of self-generating pure presence. In the pale, windless sky, the dimension of light and color, and the 5 forms of pristine awareness are self-manifesting. In the lamp of the pure field of reality, both delusion and the dimension of creative potency manifest. It is essence, nature, non-duality, beyond separation or unification. Here time is exhausted. It is free from activity, like the essence of space. As to its subjective manifestation, the penetrating the essence of sound Tantra states, the field of reality has internal and external aspects. The external is the experience of the cloudless sky. The internal is the way of appearance of the lamps. The Tantra of self-generating pure presence also states, the eye investigates the realm of space. The light subtly coils into forms. And what this means is investigate the purity of space. An introduction is given in the Radiant Sphere Tantra. In the field of the Buddha Dakini, the Padma Dakini is mirrored. Space is opened up for the Ratna Dakini, as well as a place for the Kama Dakini. The reality field of the Vajra Dakini directly manifests. Such a visible manifestation of pure presence is not just something relative. The Penetrating the Essence of Sound Tantra states, pure presence itself manifests like a Vajra chain. It is not something made by anyone in the present, past, or future. It is itself unconditioned. Since the nature of this Vajra chain is pristinely free of all judgments about it, it is undiluted Buddhahood. For a person who relies on this direct experience, even the name of the three realms of samsara does not exist. Therefore, existence in these three is cut off. Because one sees the indivisibility of pure presence and its field, this is called perspective. Because one remains in this dimension, this is called meditation. Because there is no striving involved, this is called conduct. The result is called holy complete space. Experiencing this is done according to the oral instructions. Now, if in this treatise it is claimed that the mandala of Buddhahood is indivisible from the pathways, energies, and potencies of the aggregate of the body composed of the phases, then would Buddhahood also be something relative? While all sentient beings and their worlds are relative and impermanent, according to this teaching, the body is concretely held to be a Buddha mandala, and the Buddha mandala is free from the conditioned. The essential point is that it is not something relative. The whole generation of the perishable world arises from the delusion that there is a lack of pure presence, which is itself the creative energy of pristine awareness. This is the essential point that distinguishes this instruction. An individual who knows that there is no delusion in the primordial ground of being, and then goes astray, establishing sentient beings and their worlds, this is like a white shell appearing yellow to a jaundiced eye. Although a variety of seemingly conflicting passions manifests, one knows that there is no delusion in the ground. Fully realizing this, then whatever one does, one knows there is no cause for delusion. Knowing this, primordially there is the freedom of self-generating, pristine awareness. At the time of delusion, there is the freedom of self-generating, pristine awareness, and in the end, there is the freedom of self-generating, pristine awareness. The Radiant Sphere Tantra states, first, light erroneously manifests as the phases. By this delusion, the form of sentient beings and their worlds is established. Now, this delusion is purified by intrinsic intelligence. The phases are purified in the dimension of pristine awareness. This non-residue itself is Buddhahood. In other teachings, this is not the case. Other Buddhist teachings do not understand that the primordial ground is at first causal basis, then ground of delusion, and finally ground of freedom. They hold everything, all sentient beings and worlds, to be merely relative, impermanent entities conventionally produced by lack of pristine awareness as a first cause. Further, they hold that the universe of sentient beings and their worlds is generated when the phases, arising within the mandala of space, mutually produce one another. When the four phases are in relative balance, the universe of worlds is generated. When the four phases become mutually destructive, at that time the universe is destroyed. In the same way, at the time when the phases mutually support one another, their active energy, which is found in all plant life, makes for the growth of sprouts, leaves, flowers, and so forth. When the four phases are relatively harmonized, fruits mature and the energy settles in them. Then, when the phases become mutually antagonistic, all the fruits and leaves fall. When each of the phases is functioning, there is dryness and so forth. In the same way, the body of a sentient being is produced by the four phases. Having been born from the mother, up until age 30, the body's phases mutually assist one another. The increase in the active energy of the four phases produces power, skill, and clarity of mind. From age 30 to 40, the phases are harmonized, and the energy settles in the constitution. Then the phases become mutually antagonistic. Therefore, one's power declines, and one ages. When the phases are in conflict and separate, there is death. In the same way, when the sun, moon, and stars' activity is developing through the mutual assistance of their phases, the days are long, and it is warm in the spring. When the phases are equalized, day and night are equal. Then, when the phases are declining, the days are shorter, and there is less heat in winter. When its phases are in conflict and separate, the sun dies. In the same way, the changes in the moon and stars are due to the functions of the phases. Therefore, because they are impermanent, they are held to be relative. These things are partially true or completely true for those of low capacity. Therefore, when the phases are increasing and spreading, it is very important to apply oneself to their cultivation. 3. Experiencing how pristine awareness is present in the body. 3a. Experiencing this naturally. The body, composed of the four phases, is the basis for self-generating pure presence. The basis of the body is the triad of pathways, psychosomatic energy, and creative potency. The pathways and their energy are united in the causal creative potency. The causal potency is the active energy of the four phases, the basis for pure presence, and is indivisible. The four phases each have their individual dynamism. Thus, when these are equal or increasing, the body is maintained, and all its excellent qualities are manifest. When these phases are disturbed by certain conditions, their energy goes out of equilibrium, and they impair one another's functioning. As a result, a variety of conditions conducive to disease arise. It is very important not to disturb or impair the causal creative potency. Because this potency is the active energy of the phases, not impairing but rather increasing, it gives rise to all the special accomplishments. Because all the happiness and frustrations of samsara and nirvana are its functioning, it is very important to know the essential point of how to increase and not impair it. First, increasing it naturally. See Chapter 2, page 25. From the first day of the lunar month, it increases in stages through all the energetic pathways. The natural process of increase is as follows. The causal creative potency, which is the active aspect of the phases, gradually increases from the first day of the lunar month. At this time, it expands into the constitution from the configuration of energy at the sex organs. So then one should visualize the Dakini of the Kama family in sexual embrace, symbolic of the active aspect of these phases, within the nexus at the center of the energetic configuration at the sex organs, known as the pleasure-maintaining. Pleasing and beautiful ornaments, indicative of the full richness of being, ornament the Dakini. From the point of sexual union, the 5 colors of the active aspect of the phases each distinctly radiate uninterruptedly, filling the nexus of the energetic configuration, and from there pervading all the energetic pathways of the body. This fills the whole body with the creative potency of the pure and total presence generated by innumerable such dakas and dakinis in sexual embrace. One meditates in this way on the first day. In the end, this develops the experience of bliss and emptiness. By doing this, the phases are harmonized and the conditions for disturbing body and mind cannot arise. The expansion of the active energy gives rise to meditative experience of the unity of pleasure and emptiness, the completion of the accumulations of merit, the purification of the taint of envy, mastery over samsara and nirvana, as well as realizing the mundane and supreme qualities and all the special accomplishments. Next, the active aspect increases upward, expanding to the navel by the 4th day of the month. One should imagine the dakas and dakinis of the Lotus family at the nexus of the energetic configuration of the navel. As of the 8th day, one should imagine the dakas and dakinis of the Buddha family at the heart. As of the 10th day, one should imagine the dakas and dakinis of the Jewel family at the throat. As of the 15th of the month, the energy expands to the crown of the head, and so one imagines the dakas and dakinis of the Vajra family at the nexus of the energetic configuration there. The visualization is as above. Because the phases are expanding upward to the crown, whatever merits one accumulates are increased. And for the same reason, one shouldn't apply bleeding or burning treatments to the crown, or one loses the creative potency. Because one's constitutional energy is expanding, one can massage a shaved place at the crown of one's head with a mixture of sesame oil, sandalwood, and musk. By thus increasing the active energy, the phases of the body won't be in conflict, and the conditions for illness won't arise. If one does not do this, meditation when the energy of the phases is increasing, they will be thrown out of balance. Because the phases won't be in harmony, then disease and so forth can come about. Then after this, the active aspect of the phases expands downward. By the 19th of the lunar month, it has expanded to the throat, by the 22nd to the heart, by the 25th to the navel, by the 28th to the sex organs, and by the 30th to the soles of the feet. At these times, one should proceed as above. One can apply a mixture of various oils, honey, and nutmeg to the soles of the feet, as well as warm them in the sun. Thus the phases won't be disturbed, and obstacles won't arise. Through the growing of the energy of the phases and their expansion into the constitution, the contemplation of bliss and emptiness arises, and one makes oneself fit to practice with a partner. Further, innumerable positive qualities arise. Based on this natural process of increase of the active aspect of the phases, one can add the secondary ingredient of such an objective support. This concludes the presentation of the natural process of increase. 3b. The essential points of the experience. Second, the explanation of the essential points of the experience is to be found elsewhere. 3c. The objects of the meditation experience. Illness comes about in our body, which is produced from the active aspect of the four phases, as follows. The causal creative potency, on which the mind and the components of the body are based, is mixed with the active energy of the phases and is found in each. Therefore, these are completely pervaded with movement, which can be shown to produce illness through contributory conditions. See Chapter 2, page 32. When passionate attachment is the contributory condition, warm disease arises. Because the power of the wind movement of fire increases when this warmth arises, the phases are disturbed and there is illness. When anger and unhappiness act as a motivating cause, wind movement arises, thereby increasing its power. Once again, the phases are disturbed and there is illness. Then dullness, acting as a motivating cause, generates phlegm and cold. This increases the power of the movement of the water phase, disturbing the balance of the phases, and disease results. Illness comes about whenever the disharmony becomes great enough. Whenever the functioning of one of the three primary constituents is low, one falls ill. Whenever two are low or high, one falls ill. When they are neither high nor low but equal, illness cannot come about. There is no sentient being who does not have a greater or lesser predominance of a phase. Sleeping during the day generally acts as a contributory condition for illness. Therefore, if a person with a predominance of wind falls asleep during the day, Therefore, if a person with a predominance of wind falls asleep during the day, they get a wind illness. Further, the wind can be combined with either heat or cold. In the same way, if a person with a predominance of earth sleeps during the day, they generate phlegm. If a person with a predominance of water sleeps during the day, they can get a cold disease. If a person with a predominance of fire sleeps during the day, they generate heat. All of these can in turn be associated with a warm or cold illness. This condition of sleeping during the day increases the power of whatever phase is predominant. By disharmonizing the phases, they begin to oppose one another. The disturbing phase produces the illness that is characterized by that phase itself. Therefore, one ought to avoid sleeping during the day. Improper eating and behavior, which disorders the phases and leads to illness, also should be eliminated. In general, obsessing over thoughts associated with the conflicting emotions disturbs the active energy of the phases. Because this generates illness, rather than letting any concepts of the 5 poisonous conflicting emotions that have arisen get into your system, one ought to neutralize them in the sphere of reality itself. Further, because the active aspects of the 4 phases are complete based on the stomach, when these are disturbed, they dry up and generate illness. The visualization in this case to cure the illness is as follows. By concentrating on the palpable warmth of the radiance of the fire, symbolized by the lotus dakini and sexual embrace at the center of the generative energetic configuration at the navel, The active aspect of the four phases in the form of fire arises from the point of sexual union. One thereby can imagine that this fills all the pathways radiating from the energetic configuration at the navel. This generates the heat of the stomach, and because of this, one cannot be harmed by any illness. Also, in the case of warm disease, one visualizes the Vajra Dakini in sexual embrace at the crown of the head. In the case of a composite illness, generate the Dakini of the Buddha family in sexual embrace at the energetic configuration of the heart. Further, in the case of cold diseases, imagine the Padma Dakini in sexual embrace with her consort at the navel. For wind disease, imagine the Dakini of the Kama family in sexual embrace with her consort at the sex organs. Further, in regard to all diseases, one can visualize one's body as a sieve or empty form described above. Then allow the nectar to flow from the yab-yum forms that are the antidote to whatever disease is present. This will purify the body and its energies and eliminate the disturbance. Concentrate as above with whatever visualization is applicable whenever illness, such as a wound and so forth, is combined with heat or cold. This will harmonize the phases, bring the active aspect of their energy there, and thus cure the illness. Thus one should know the visualizations for all types of illnesses. By so doing, one can obtain mastery of pure presence, quickly and without bodily obstacles, thereby fully awakening oneself. This experiential core instruction from the cycle of essential teachings was put in writing on top of Rust Mountain and memorized by Yeshe Tsogyal. May it meet with someone who can use it. Thus, a section of hidden oral instruction of the Dakini is completed. Samaya, sealed, sealed, sealed. Part 2. Commentary. 5. A Dzogchen approach to yoga. The view of Dzogchen. In the Tibetan tradition, Dzogchen means the understanding of the total completeness, the primordial wholeness of a person. According to this perspective, this wholeness is present right from the very beginning of the path, from wherever we make a start. At first, this wholeness, this completeness, sounds very abstract and philosophical, as either a high-sounding platitude or the product of some long, complex process. A key to unlocking this seeming paradox, that the goal is present in the beginning, is to look directly to our experience in order to recognize that some kind of motivation already exists. From the point of view of Dzogchen, the whole teaching, its basis, path, and goal, can be understood by looking into our motivation. The importance of motivation. All the Buddhist schools talk, in some way, at the beginning of the path, about the importance of motivation, bodhicitta. The Mahayana tradition, for example, emphasizes the motivation to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. In that case, motivation is a basis for setting out on the path, but Dzogchen is said to be a direct rather than a gradual path. Thus, motivation is not the starting point for doing something else. The starting point is not separate from the path and the goal. What do we mean, then, by motivation in Dzogchen? Motivation, bodhicitta, is just another name for Dzogchen, the total completeness of one's being, present right now. More precisely, motivation here refers to that aspect of one's complete being which is its ability to know itself. It refers to the pure fact of being aware, our capacity and desire to know. The goal of our capacity and desire to know is nothing other than this awareness itself. Knowing wants to know. We experience this basic knowing as a desire to understand our world and ourselves. Motivation is always already there, working, shedding light, making conscious, mirroring the whole universe, overcoming boundaries to the unknown. Its intention is to know, and the practice of Dzogchen is to experience and be this knowing. This motivation, this desire to know, goes beyond mere curiosity. It is wholeness desiring to know, to mirror itself. Dzogchen is known in Tibet as the summit of all paths, a teaching directly from the mind of the primordial Buddha, Samantabhadra. But this does not mean, as I have said, that it is not a practical path to Buddhahood, nor that one cannot put into practice the perspective of Dzogchen right from the start of the path. It needs, however, to be transmitted in order to wake up or point out this primordial knowing in a person. In Dzogchen, this is known as direct introduction. This direct introduction is like seeing all of one's being in a mirror and understanding that one's own awareness is that mirror. It is with this experience that the way of Dzogchen begins. But such a perspective is extremely difficult for our limited ego structure to assimilate. It clashes with our self-image. It is too radical. We want to fit it back into our habitual perspective, to relegate it to the status of an experience, which easily becomes a memory that we can assimilate. It takes hard work to really be that mirror, to overcome that tremendous gulf of reified duality that prevents us from being it. We identify with too much of what the mirror reveals, all that we cannot accept and cannot understand in ourselves. We cannot be whole and overcome that split in ourselves that creates the observer who judges, who struggles, who strategizes, who defends, who needs such a self-image. Thus we can never truly relax and open up an awareness that is truly free to let everything be experienced, and to create out of that pure knowingness bodhicitta. What I am saying is that this knowingness, which is revealed in the direct introduction of Dzogchen and likened to a mirror, also reveals the obstacles to its full realization. In this sense, the knowledge revealed in direct introduction also provides the basis for overcoming obstacles in its very desire to know. Another way to put this would be to say that the experience of direct introduction provides us with a unique perspective and way of working with our situation. Thus it provides us with something related to, but ultimately more than, the desire to know that is involved in psychotherapy. We have at least a glimpse of a radically new perspective from which to observe ourselves. The methods of Dzogchen also provide us with a means to nurture this new perspective itself. My primary teacher of Dzogchen, Namkhai Nobu Rinpoche, always said, "Observe yourself to discover how you are limited and conditioned, trapped in the cage of dualism like a little bird." What this means is that we need to see that all our obstacles have reified dualism as their root, that this is our fundamental limitation. This is not our usual understanding of our problems or of our positive qualities. Usually we take up the position of somebody who is getting better or worse, who is okay or not so good, who wants to be better or does not give a damn, and so on. Every path has its characteristic perspective. Without understanding this perspective, you cannot put it into practice, which is meditation. That is how the path progresses, as one unfolds the dialectical dance between the perspective and its application in practice. For example, if one understands vipassana meditation as the cultivation of mindfulness, observing, noting, and letting go of experiences, this is only a preparation. It is cultivating mindfulness for the purpose of inner calm, shamatha, which is a very useful skill, but it is not the true meaning of vipassana, which is insight into the nature of reality. To practice vipassana, one has to understand the perspective one is implementing, which is explained in different ways in various Buddhist schools. Dzogchen too has its perspective, but with Dzogchen we are not looking at our limitations as something we need to do, something to or with, to analyze or overcome, or transform or transmute. Why? Because the nature of primordial knowing is such that by knowing something in this way, you are already beyond reified dualism. To truly know one's obstacles is to no longer have obstacles. This kind of knowing initiates a very powerful yet subtle dialectic in one's experience. At the very beginning of the Dzogchen path, one can begin to learn that the perspective and its practice are actually not separate, and that the motivation of our basic knowingness and its obstacles are really not separate either. This is what gives this path its uniqueness. Once we are introduced to this primordial knowing that serves as our basic motivation, we can begin to look further into both what it is and what our obstacles are. For example, there is a Dzogchen approach to the practices of calming the mind, jhana, Sanskrit shamatha, and insight, laktong, Sanskrit vipassana. This approach is found in the Nature of Mind series, 7-day, of teachings. The introduction to this fundamental knowingness is very precise in the Samye. One could say that it happens gradually. The reason that it is so precise is that it works step by step with the process of getting to know some fundamental aspects of our mind. It sets up a definite strategy about how we can come to experience ourselves beyond reified dualism. In this case, we must first know what this dualism is. In the Samye, one learns about it in two ways. The first is by direct confrontation through the power of the teacher's introduction, and/or through exercises one does oneself. The second is by thorough familiarization, through trying to control one's mind according to the traditional practices of calm and insight. In the Dzogchen Samye, one does not practice calm and insight for their own sake, as one does in other paths, but to reveal the inherent reification of subject and object in the effort of the mind to control and analyze itself. To practice them for their own sake means to progress gradually on the path by means of the experience and understanding these methods bring. To practice this non-gradual path means to set about undercutting this inherent reification right from the start. But this does not mean one abandons all calm and insight. Rather, it means that one comes to recognize that these states are intrinsic aspects of our fundamental knowingness, and one does not have to strive after them. The subject who strives to control the objects of his or her own experience through techniques of meditation is a mental representation, an image. When one sees this, one can begin to relax into another level of experience in which the object of meditation loses its power to disturb or distract. We can apply the same approach to yogic practice. In the Tibetan tantric tradition, there are yogic practices such as yantra yoga, involving movements and postures, breathing exercises, and visualizations. From a practical standpoint, what is the Dzogchen approach to these practices? If Dzogchen works with what is, in the sense of not struggling to change anything, and yogic practices require discipline and overcoming resistances to regular practice, how can we avoid struggle? In the Dzogchen view, these resistances, whether they are laziness, perfectionism, chronic health complaints, and so on, are to be respected. In this sense, this way of working has some similarities to the psychotherapeutic understanding of resistances. The resistances are intelligent. They cannot be bullied out of the way by a sovereign ego. What is the root cause of these resistances? Ignoring and not working with what is. In this case, what is means the reality that my body is not just an object, even if I treat it well with good yogic exercises and breathing practices. This reality includes the fact that our body has an unconscious meaning for us, and that this meaning needs to be addressed. How is this meaning addressed in traditional practices? I am not saying here that this is a cultural issue, that these yogic practices need to be understood in the context of the culture in which they were developed, although that may indeed be useful. Rather, in the traditional context, questions of body image, body ego, the relation of mind and body, and so on, were addressed in terms of the esoteric meditations on the Vajra, or energy body, with its channels and chakras. Now, the practices of the energy body are not beginning practices of this yoga. They can only really be done, that is, not just as visualizations, after one has mastered the method of held breath known as kumbhaka, Sanskrit, or vase breathing. How can one dissolve this difficulty in which questions of meaning are present from the start, but only seemingly addressed at an advanced level of practice? The solution is to realize, first, that the esoteric meditations on the energy body are actually the heart of this yoga, and can therefore be placed at the beginning, and second, that these meditations can be understood to deal with the psychological issues of the unconscious meanings of the body mentioned above. To repeat, Dzogchen, the way of liberation, can be applied right from the start of the path. Dzogchen, wholeness, completeness, believes that understanding what is in any moment or situation is liberating. In Dzogchen, this is what is explained in terms of essence, nature, and energy. So whether one is a beginner or not, the outlook, the practice, and the way of taking the practice into the world are the same: to know and experience the essence, nature, energy of one's situation. This is to maintain beginner's mind. The essence of this beginner's mind is emptiness. Its nature is clarity, and its energy is unceasing, non-dual manifestation. We can approach tantric yoga practices from the standpoint of the gradual path. First you do this, then you do that. In fact, it seems absolutely necessary because there is no way to non-gradually do practices such as vase breathing or advanced asanas such as the wheel and the peacock.